Hello and welcome to everyone. Good to be back for the last session of this time that we have together. And I'm delighted to welcome Philip Snow again, who's going to be doing a drawing workshop for us this afternoon. I will hand over to him now.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. Not that I can see you properly all again. Yes, we're going to look at different aspects of birds. Now, if you've been to some of the workshops before, you will know that we've drawn flying birds and perching birds. And this time we're going to be looking at different aspects of their physiology. So, as usual, I shall do a little presentation for about 10 minutes. So I'll share the screen. Where are we? Here we are. And hopefully you'll all be able to see this. I hope you've got big screens because there's a lot of little, I might have shown bits of this before. This is actually a large panel showing day 5 of creation, the birds and the flying creatures and all the marine and freshwater fish and creatures as well. This is just 1/6 of the panel, but what it shows you is just a bit of the variety of bird shapes. You look at the flamingo, they've got quite pointed wings. You look at this is a harpy eagle, has very, very broad wings, because that's a forest dwelling bird. Then you see something like a crane, which can migrate long distances. They have, their feathers are called emarginated. They have gaps between the feathers to allow for the control of the air, like this buzzard species here. Whereas other birds, like these little ones here, have quite different shaped wings. And then we get something like a parrot, which has surprisingly pointed wings. And the birds of paradise, there's a huge, huge variety in wings and body shapes, which once again shows that what we're looking at here is creation and not any kind of evolution, which evolutionists, of course, tell us that a dinosaur got bored and started to try jumping out of trees or jumping off cliffs so that it could turn into a bird. And then if you do that enough, you will turn into a bird. Well, I can vouch for the fact that you won't actually, you'll turn into a hospital case, because I once did fall down a cliff. But that is evolutionary theory, believe it or not. I think William talked a bit about it this morning. All the evidence, as in Romans 1, will always come back to this wonderful scripture. Shows you that there's a tremendous amount of design and function and purpose and variety. And just look at this little lot here. This is an American ruffed grouse, which actually stamps on the ground. It stamps up and down, makes incredible thundering noise, like a roll of drums. Whereas the great bustard can more or less turn itself inside out. It's turning its feathers underneath the wings here and spreading them out in every direction. And that's quite a big bird. They've been reintroduced. Some of you will know, not even seen them, on Salisbury Plain. Whereas the golden eagle has quite long wings, but they're not that pointed. And when it stoops, I call this the golden heart shape. When a golden eagle stoops like this, it can reach 200 miles an hour. That's quite impressive. And these wings are between 6 and 7 feet. This is a little, by contrast, this is a little meadow pipit. And you've seen them, this is called parachuting flight. Now parachute down, singing all the while. Not as good a singer as a skylark, but this, you see this parachuting display in lots of places where you've still got proper rough ground, as it were, rough grazing and meadows and heathland and coastlands, meadow pipits, and up on the highlands as well, one of the commonest birds in Britain, actually. Now this is a widow bird. Can't quite remember why it's called a widow bird, but it hovers above the grasses down on the African plains and waggles its great long tail around. I mean, this tail is 3 times at least as long as the bird. And you see these fantastic tail feathers here. This is all part of God's huge variety of design. And of course, there was no actual need for this. Some people will call it an embarrassment of riches. It's only an embarrassment, of course, to an evolutionist. And these birds of paradise are really quite spectacular. And these feathers here in the greater bird of paradise are actually under the wings. They're sort of coming out of its armpit, as it were. And this one is absolutely wonderful. It hangs upside down and shakes and whirs. Sounds just like a machine. And some of the displays of these birds are utterly astounding. They're way beyond our comprehension, apart from the colors and the shapes. This thrush down here, a lot of birds have crests, but they run back over the head. This particular thrush has a crest that runs across its head. Now, I don't think the Romans saw this before they came up with their silly headgear. Well, they couldn't have done because it was in Southeast Asia. But it just shows you just some of the variety and size, from the massive to the tiny, and some of the things that they do are just incredible. Right. This is a book I hope to publish sometime, possibly. But when I took it, it ended up as this book, The Design and Origin of Birds. But the original book was somewhat different. And that's what happens when you work with publishers. I'm sure many of you are going to be writers and painters, and you have to deal with publishers, and you take ideas to publishers, and they move them around and turn them around. And so, but my idea was more of an impersonal book rather than a very, very scientific book. I just wanted to show the incredible different ways that birds fly and hover and stoop. And like a woodpecker here, they bound along through the air. They close their wings and then sort of somersault through the air. That's a little wren there, believe it or not. Tiny wren. It seems to whir through the air because it's only flying particularly short distances. So its wings are fairly broad, fairly rounded. Somewhat similar to a kingfisher. And of course, the kingfisher has its colors and what have you, which I think we talked about this before. They're prismatic colors. The kingfisher isn't actually colored at all. This is just God's genius showing light split up into all these constituent parts, depending on these incredible little photonic structures, like mirror-covered pyramids on every single barb of every single feather. So these little pyramids are splitting light up by the quintillion on birds into all these incredible colors. So some birds are pigment colors, like this big red kite, meaning that they will fade after they die, whereas the colors on prismatic birds, like this macaw here and the kingfisher, are not colors at all. They're light, the genius of God. You know? This is a mute swan, as you probably know, and of course, there's no such thing as white in creation. There's no such thing as black. I mean, there's black and white in concepts, particularly biblical concepts. But as for colors, there is no such thing as pure black or pure white. You will find white is you look at sheep in the snow and you see they're not white at all. You know? Down here's a grey heron, and that flies on deeply bowed wings. And that's not flying. Some of them do migrate from Russia down through the Mediterranean. Ours in Britain tend to hang around the coast in the winter more than they would inland. But this is just showing you some of the huge variety of birds' designs. Now, I think I've showed this one before, and I've also said if any of you want these are articles I've done for various magazines or books. And I can easily send these via email. If you email William by David, and then I can send these to you. I've already sent them to some of you, I know, but articles, I forgot what this magazine was actually. But you see, remember we did Shapes of Wrens, I think we did a heron as well, showing you how they can change shape almost instantly, but just simply by stretching the neck up and down and by compressing or blowing out their feathers, depending upon temperature, either to keep warm or to lose heat. The immense different shapes of bills, of beaks, are really tremendous. I mean, the goldfinch has this chunky beak because it's eating quite small seeds, so it needs a fine beak to pick them out, but a bit of strength to crush them. This curlew is digging into the mud and expertly feeling with the end of its beak, whether it's a worm or a small crab or a crustacean, a shellfish or whatever. The blackbird is a generalized beak, whereas the whitethroat has a narrow beak because that's largely insects in the summer, although they do like blackberries as well. And the great crested grebe, actually, they don't spear fish, but they do catch fish underwater. And that's a particularly beautiful bird, particularly beautiful British bird. And likewise with the feet, tremendous variety of feet, fine feet in the small passerines. Passerines are anything you would call a perching bird, like the tits or the sparrows that William showed this morning. And then you get the birds of prey with the stronger claws and stronger feet. And then you get waders that need to spread the weight out on mud and sand, and birds like seabirds and ducks, waterfowl, that have webbed feet so that they can paddle, gives them propulsion. And again, I think I've showed this one before as well, but if you want any of these, I can easily send them by email. They're only a couple of 100 kilobytes each. And you can, I think we did a workshop drawing an owl. And these are showing some of the different feathers from the bird. Again, this huge variety of feathers just on one bird, let alone within different birds. I might have showed this one as well. Again, these are all available for free via JPEGs. And these are showing you all the different groups of feathers. Now, a wren is going to have the same groups of feathers as a kestrel, as a golden eagle, and all of them except an ostrich and a rhea, all except the flightless birds. But they're just different shapes and different patterns. And again, on the head, there will be crown and breast and cheek patches, etc. And these will all vary in color and variety. And here's the basic structure of a bird. You see its skeleton is absolutely, it's a lightweight miracle of engineering. A lot of these bones are hollow. In fact, the air in a lot of birds goes all the way around the body and through the bones, as well as all the different air sacs all the way down here. So if anybody tells you that a dinosaur has evolved into a bird, a dinosaur has bellows lungs, as we have, as humans have, and we have a diaphragm across the middle below our ribs, and the lungs cannot go below the diaphragm, otherwise you'd be in deep trouble. So they're asking you, evolutionists are asking you to believe that a dinosaur has ruptured its diaphragm to accidentally evolve a bird's respiratory system or breathing system, which of course is not very intelligent at all. But then that's neo-Darwinism. Again, here you can see with this chaffinch's wing, the way that when it's folded, a small white patch becomes a wing bar. And all these are the same groups of feathers as we found on the kestrel here. And this is a little piece showing you how the wings, well, we all know they go up and down, although a kestrel literally hangs on the wings as well. But you see, as they go up, as they come down, they're pressing the air down, and as they're going back up, they're letting the air out through the slots, the wing slots. That's that emargination of the primaries, simply meaning they get narrower towards the tips to control the flow of the air. The other point about feathers is that you can tell where a feather comes from on a tail or a wing, because the outer edge of the feather will be a lot narrower than the inner edge. By the time they get to the middle of the tail, this feather is equidistant on either side. You see that the shaft of the feather goes right down the middle, so it's the same shape on either side. So you can see which side of the tail it comes from and whereabouts on the tail. And that's similar with flight feathers. and with secondary feathers. We're going to be drawing a mallard's wing in a minute, which has those beautiful blue and purple secondary feathers. Now this is just to try to simplify a diagram of how a barn owl flies. I say it's only going to be up here briefly now, but I can easily send you these. You can study these, the way that the wings appear to change shape as they come towards you, as they go away from you. And they're all controlled by these very strong breast muscles down here. That's why they have a large sternum or breastbone, because they've got these very large breast muscles here needed to work the wings. That's why if you've eaten chicken, many of you have eaten chicken, you'll see that the main part of the breast is the breast meat. And that's the most important part, because they're the ones that work the wings. So again, a madly flapping dinosaur is never going to evolve wings by jumping out of a tree. Here's a beautiful little bird. It's actually, I'll show you the actual size of it. Unfortunately, it flew into a neighbor's window, and there's the actual bird. There's the actual size. If we have time, we'll draw the head later. This has been preserved with formaldehyde, which I have to point out, as wasn't pointed out when I first started doing this, that formaldehyde is a poison. So you have to be very careful about how you handle formaldehyde. But it does dry, it's literally mummifying the birds or the animals. So the pharaohs were mummified, but they were nothing like as pretty as this little kingfisher. So that kingfisher I showed you is almost full size. It's only about 12 weeks old. So on one of its first flights, unfortunately, it flew into a window. But what an opportunity to study for me. You notice that the kingfisher in the juvenile, the beak is slightly shorter than the adult kingfisher. It usually has a bit of a white tip. And you get darker edges to the feathers, some of the feathers. But it is more or less as beautiful as an adult kingfisher. And these really are absolutely incredible birds. And there's a huge variety of them all over the world. Now you see my little title here is Wings, Feathers, Skulls and Sketches. These are 4 of the most important things that I use in my study. But the most important thing of all, for whatever you are drawing, are sketches. Now these are some of my best sketches. I've just put 9, 10 A4 sketches in a frame for an exhibition to show that field sketching is the most important thing. Whether you're drawing bowls of fruit or people or birds or whatever, landscapes, you just have to keep sketching and sketching and sketching and not worrying about how good it's going to look, because it's practice, and it's all about sketching shapes as well. About sketching shapes, tones and colors, and recession into the landscape, as it were. So we've got a bittern here and some black grouse, a beautiful redstart, male redstart, chuffed red kite up here. There's a young greater-spotted woodpecker and a squirrel there waiting to go down on the bird feeders. Pintail, otter. These are all the things I've seen around here. Oh, not the black grouse, that's over on the mainland. And the woodcock, they're just starting to return. We've ringed some woodcock here, and they have been found. They've just come back from Siberia. Right, so I'm now going to change to the other camera, hopefully. And I hope you've all got your pencils and colors ready. I've been very impressed by the way that you've not only drawing what I've been drawing, but you've been painting and coloring them too. So here's a mallard's wing. It's obvious I can't draw it life size, it's just too large, but just look at that. That's called the speculum. You'll see the way it changes from purple. Look at that, purple to blue-green. That's the genius of our creator. Blue, green and purple, purple, blue, green. Absolutely beautiful. That's called the speculum. all the secondary feathers. These are the primary feathers. These are primary feather covers. And these are the secondary feathers covers. So it's a little bit messy, but it's very difficult to keep feathers in completely good order. Right, so here's my piece of paper. I've actually put 3 spots on here to indicate where I'm going to, because it's very difficult for me to see what I'm doing here. I'm looking at the screen and down at the paper. So here we go. We're going to do, as usual, a basic simple shape. I'm going to do a line like so. The line like so. I say don't worry about them being completely accurate, because we're going to adapt as we go along. So we want to have a shape like that and a shape like that. I'll just bring that back in again. Gone beyond the edge of the paper there. I just have to go and adjust the window again. I've got this, the sun keeps coming in and going out. I've adjusted the blinds and I've still got this piece of light coming through. I have no idea what it's anyway, the sun will go in again in a minute, I think. Now we're going to do a little from the body, just round that off a bit, and then down here we're going to have this slightly longer. Difficult to get the camera in the right position. I'll just round that off so it joins the body. Now when I showed you that colored speculum, that's going to be roughly half of the bottom half of the wing there. So along here, there are something like 10 feathers here. And those are the ones that are either blue, green, or purple. But before we come down to those, we're going to put another little line of feathers here. I'm just dotting them to indicate where they're going to go. As you remember from the past, the groups of feathers then get smaller and smaller and closer together until they're no longer distinguishable as separate feathers. Now this one also, we do these feathers like so. You don't have to bother copying, counting. So they do vary whether the wing is long or short. They're going to vary in size slightly. So now there are other big feathers down here. These are called the axillaries. Sorry, scapulars. The axillary is the one underneath the wing. Again, they're getting more and more pointed and smaller. Rub that bit out. And that. down a bit. Now that's better. So these, the ones up here, these are all brown. So they're going to get less and less. They're all going to merge together. So if you are going to color them later or now, they're just indicated. There's no need to do them all individually. But this row of feathers from here has a little black crescent like so. Because this row of feathers are white. So these are brown up here, these are white. And so these little crescents, these lovely little crescents on each one. And they're all going to vary slightly. Some of them are deeper, some of them are more blodgy. If you look at another male mallard, you will find that it'll have its own variation on all of these little patterns. And so I'm going to shade these. So that the white bit, these white feathers below, these white feathers stand out. And these are also these can be quite, these feathers are quite dark down here, but they get lighter as they come in. And that one's a little bit too curved there. And then see the way they join in the curve down to the pointed feathers down here. So these are quite dark. And then we get into the bit that's blue-green or purple. And they're all going to come down to a bit of a point. And one below each black and white feather. You can then rub out that line. And that one is that's actually a brown feather. So we've got the general shape there. Now, what I'm going to do is just move it up. Of this side of these feathers is actually, the barbs go this way. And is it the same up here? I'm not going to go all the way up here, just to show that this bit is quite dark. Contrast. Rub that line up. What I'm going to do is do some shading, not going to the edge. And I'm going to put some color on in a minute. I won't have time to do all of these. And just give some idea. With all the barbs and the feathers. And as this is going to get brighter, going to get more purple towards this end. The other thing about this wing is it's slightly curved. There's a curve running this way. Of course, depending on how this one is all brown. So I'm going to put some color on this in a minute. But now we have to do the outer wing. I'm going to tip it that way. Now the almost about halfway down this wing, we want to do an arc. We want to come across to here and end up here. So we're going to do an arc, something like that. You can just rough it in to begin with. Like so. In fact, now that means we will make these a little longer. To fit in more with the overall shape of the wing. Rub that out. Now, most birds have 10 primaries. They're the 10 here, and of course 10 primary covers covering them. But don't worry if you can't get all 10 in. And at the top here, we've also got another arc, as it were, roughly speaking. And these are called the alua. It has another slightly rude name, which I won't use, but it's called the alua. That's the little, when they're flying, they can raise this little bit out here to direct the air between the wing. That's where aeroplanes get the idea of a wing slot from this alua here. So they vary, but again, they're quite small, and they are all brown, in this browny grey in the case of the male and the female mallard. I think the male mallard wing is slightly lighter. It has the same blue-green speculum. It's slightly lighter. Now what we've got to do now is to get 10 feathers into this. If you sort of practice coming from here, the feathers are attached underneath here. underneath this bit. They're attached. The first one, second, third, etc., etc. And what you've got to do is literally, I just draw a small one here. What you've got to do is divide it up, keep on subdividing it until you've got approximately 10 feathers. I say, don't worry if you can't get the full number. So we'll do one roughly half the way along. And then we'll divide that one in half. See, they're not going to be parallel. Divide that one again, and then divide this one. So at the moment we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need to divide those in half. Now I say, do them, I should have said, do them pale with your pencil to begin with, because you can always adjust them as you go along. This one's going to divide there. That's going to divide there. That's going to divide there. I'm going to adjust this one actually. I'm going to fiddle with that a bit to bring it right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this one has 9 primaries. A lot of birds do have 9 primaries. The mallard is supposed to have 10, but today this one has got 9. I'm not going to rub them all out again to get them. See, normally if I'm drawing like this, I would draw them very pale indeed until I got the right amount in, as it were. So these brown ones we did here are going to become spear shapes. These are primary covers because they're covering the base of the primaries. They're going to have little bits up here. And like so. And then, now remember what I said, the outer ones have a narrower outside than the inside. So this is going to be like this. So the narrow outside is narrower. But the inside is getting wider as it comes in. So that by the time and that. So again, I'm going to this is the part of the wing, grey-brown. I'm not going to have time to fill it in completely. I'm sure if you want to color this later, if you look at most bird books should show you the coloring, especially this blue-green. But as I say, I'm not going to color that one now because time is running on. I can't believe how much time has just gone by. So what we're going to do now is draw this feather. This feather is off a curlew, and it's off the back of the wing. Now you notice this beautiful pattern slightly changes as it goes up the feather, but it is what you might call a classic feather shape, slightly curved and long and spear shaped. The common shape of a feather from various parts of the body. Now, if you look here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 7 bars on that. So I need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm just going to do that. Simplify them. Now the end one is like an upside down heart. I do that. Color that in. And then they go in narrower as they go in. And they're getting closer together as they go down. So the bars are getting thicker and they're going closer together. That's why when you find feathers, you'll often find these white bits are missing because they are weaker, not having the pigment in them. And these will vary. You'll find this feathers like this on a kestrel or a peregrine, and not dissimilar on a great spotted woodpecker. But the curlew has one of the greatest abundance of these beautifully patterned feathers and the lines can be quite, yeah. Now I think I'm sorry, I'm hurrying a bit now. I took a lot longer on the wing than I intended to. Got carried away. Now, one of the most exciting things that I enjoy drawing are birds of prey and birds of prey heads. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do the head of a peregrine falcon. If you remember from some of the earlier things, we started off with an egg shape. I do it quite pale. Doesn't matter, it's a fairly basic egg shape. Now the most important thing in a peregrine falcon is its eye. So we're going to come down, if we take a line down here, and a line about at a third of the way down the head, like so, the eye is going to sit. And the eyes are quite big, of course, because their vision is 8 times as better than human vision. They can spot prey from a long, long way away. So even in the fall of creation, we see that design is obviously still there, still paramount. So the eye is going to go here. But first of all, I'm going to put in the curve of the beak. They do it quite pale till you think it's right. This is the curved beak of many a bird of prey. They're all going to be bigger or smaller, longer or sharper, depending upon. And also we're going to have another line that's basically parallel to that one out there, you can see we've already got the makings of a bird of prey. And now the beak itself comes, if we imagine a line like that, a long curving line. And so between it and the eye, you want a distance of something like that. These are called the lures, the small spiky feathers that sometimes cover the nostril. The nostril is usually there. And of course, the nostril has to be very well designed for a bird that can stoop at 245 miles an hour. And so the eye, you just sort of imagine you're drawing a circle like that. The eye is going to be about here. The eye is quite large. Compared to the size of the head, the eyes are massive. And on owls, they're really huge. They'll look larger or smaller on a peregrine. If it's a female peregrine, the bird is larger, so the eye looks slightly smaller. The male head is slightly smaller, but it's got the same size eye. So those are the basics of a bird of prey head. Now the beak usually starts underneath the eye here, and it's going across like that. If it was a sparrowhawk, it would have a what they call a rostrum here, but as it's a falcon, it has a tooth, and that tooth is for dispatching its prey. And so quite sharp. And their beak made of the same material as our nails, fingernails, toenails. So it grows, but it has to be worn down by eating usually bones. And the lower mandible comes in like that. The lower mandible actually, and then you'll see in a lot of birds that sort of shape. Now we need to take that a little bit higher here. And you will also know that this is bony, naily. This bit is called the cere. And this is often yellow in birds of prey, and it's a waxy material. And it has the nostrils in it. So the nostrils have to be specially designed. They have a baffle in there to circulate the air. Otherwise, you stoop at 245 miles an hour with your nostrils open, you might blow your head off. But once again, we have a supreme designer here. And so this baffle circulates the air and slows it down. I say these bits are called the lures, and they're basically that shape, like a backwards number 3. And these are these little hairs sticking out. And all around the eye, there is this waxy material, same waxy material as here on the cere. I'll put that. That's the cere. That's the lures down here. So if there is an eye ring, they're usually of that same waxy material, and then another bit, usually roughly that shape. And this is where you get the eyebrow. This is why birds of prey look fierce, because they have this ridge, supraorbital ridge, which just means a ridge above the eye. They have this ridge to protect them. So if you're flying very, very fast, you want a projecting eyebrow in case, well, of course you do hit things, you hit birds and what have you, but in case you hit a tree or whatever. And so we need to put a bit more shape on the top of the head. And that's going to come up from here, little forehead. and then over to the back. Now the throat, I'm going to bring this line down here because that we've got to get the cheek. This is the cheek here, and that's in owls, of course, that the ears are behind that. A lot of birds' ears are behind. You often see a little hole here on some birds. I'm going to color the eye in black, apart from the little bit here, leaving a white bit here because that's the light catching on the eye. Because the eye, of course, sticks out. It's projecting. And also we often have a dark patch here. Bird of prey beaks are often a sort of blue-black color. And you get the corresponding dark bit underneath as well. So I say these are the lures, the small spiky feathers. These are also going to help so you don't get dust in your eyes. When you see them on things like nightjars, they stick out. They actually help to funnel insects into a nightjar's mouth. These lures here. Now, as this is a peregrine, of course, one of the strongest parts of a peregrine, that's the inside of the mouth. The strongest parts of a peregrine is its wonderful moustache stripe. And basically, it varies tremendously. If you see them in a kestrel, they're quite narrow, or a merlin. And some birds, it'll be a complete dark cheek. But then the edge of the cheek here is also dark. So I'm going to color this black. Again, following the shape. Following the general shape of the head. And these can be really, some peregrines have a complete black cheek, but this is a fairly normal. And you'll get a few, just rub out those, the original egg. We don't need the original egg anymore. And this is all dark. Again, I'm sketching across, following the contours. But I'm leaving this slightly pale, this ridge above the eye, because it's often quite black on the top of the head as well, or at least a very dark blue-black. But down here, you'll often have a little pale bit around the edge of the cere. And that's quite dark at the back as well. And there'll be a few these go down, of course, and become streaks and bars down the front. Now, the reason that I say you get that fierce look is because of the shadow here. And I'm going to do some shadow across here to be quite, because this is sticking out. See that? That's what makes it look fierce, because of the shadow. I'll put a bit of shadow under the beak there, just to give it a Yes, this is slightly this camera slightly distorts the shape that I'm drawing, so things look a bit narrower than so there. That's the upper mandible and the lower mandible and the cere nostril and the eye ring. And this is the mustachial stripe. Now, a few minutes left. I'm going to color this. We're starting off with an ultramarine blue. And there's also blue-green. Add some green. The thing about watercolor is you can play with it and take some of this color off later when it's dry. So this is a very rough approximation. I'm putting more water on the brush. I'm putting more color into the areas that are still wet. Now, the purple. Yeah, I'm putting it on while the other colors are still wet. So remember, it gets more and more purple, more tipped to the light it is. I'm afraid on my camera that doesn't look very good at all, but it gives you some idea. This isn't watercolor paper, so it doesn't take the color as well. But I've tried drawing on watercolor paper on Zoom, and it's the paper's textured and really stands out under the camera. So, well, I'm just going to finish off by putting shadow on this. Maybe that shadow that one. And we put the full color in. And that is that for now. Bring this out a bit. Try and very difficult to get it all in. Oh, didn't mean to put that color on. My peregrines are not purple, but no. Oh, that looks awful, that purple. Sorry about that. When it's dry, I shall color this. I shall get rid of this awful purple. But there we are. Oh, I can't stand it anymore. All right. I shall stop sharing the screen. Where are we? Oh, I've got to. All right. Change the camera. So I'm sorry about that. Fancy spoiling that at the last minute with purple. Sorry, I shall paint that off later when it's dry. You can remove watercolor carefully if you do it when it's dry. Anyway, has anybody got any questions? Would they like to show? I think you've been able to follow along with that. That was got a bit hurried at places. I'd like to see what you've been doing, please.
If anyone wants to turn on their videos, then we can.
Right.
Mine.
Glows. Oh, I like the, yes. Could you go on full screen?
Wait a sec, I'm just trying to.
Oh, I like the peregrine. Yes. Family work. Yeah, very good.
And this one's mine.
Right.
We didn't paint them because we didn't realise you were meant to paint until you were doing it. So we didn't
Yes,
have
I'm
to
sorry.
paint some.
Oh, that's good. Yes, yeah, nice. No, very nice. No, I didn't know whether I'd have time to paint or not. So, unfortunately, the time that I thought I had, I didn't have. And the Lucases, I've no doubt they've been busy.
Yeah.
I did this one.
Oh, very nice. I don't recall drawing lovebirds, but they're very good. Have you been watching lovebirds? Have you got lovebirds?
We've got a budgie, but
Right. But
I-
she's very clever turning the budgie into a lovebird.
I've drawn you mentioned kingfishers in your talk.
I did, yes.
So I drew a kingfisher, a blue tit, and a house sparrow from William's talk earlier.
All right.
The colours
That's really good.
aren't showing very well on here.
Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Is that? Is,
Kingfisher,
oh yes, yeah.
blue tit.
Pastel paper. Yeah,
Very
very good. Did you actually draw them from William from the screen?
I got up some pictures myself, but
Oh yeah, yeah. Very good. I like the kingfisher especially.
yeah. And then
Is that grey brown pastel paper?
yes, it is. Well, it's meant to be grey tone sketch paper, but it's
Right.
basically the same thing.
Well,
My younger sister Eve wanted to show that as well. She's not here this.
oh, nice, lovely.
She did that. So
That's very nice. It's definitely In Wales, they're called Titw Thomas Lass. Thomas Lass's tips. So I don't know why they call that. I'm sure that David Pedder will be able to enlighten us.
No,
No,
no.
Titw Thomas Lass. Very good. I especially like that kingfisher. That's really lovely.
Thanks.
On that paper, that really does. All right. Has anybody else got any to show us?
Doesn't appear so.
No. Does anybody have any questions or remarks, comments? No.
Appears not.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Philip. It's
Right.
been good to have you again. And thank you very much to you all for joining us for this couple of days that we've been able to spend together. You will hopefully be able to find all of the recordings from all of the sessions today on our YouTube channel, Nature Observations. It's on YouTube, and all of the recordings are easily accessible on there. I will send around the link later for those, though, so that you haven't got to go too far to look for them. And also, Lord willing, we will be holding an art workshop, hopefully on the 19th of November, if I'm correct.
I think so.
So we shall say goodbye to everybody for now, and hopefully perhaps see some of you on the 19th of November.
Mhm.
And Philip Snow will be back doing an art workshop.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining. We hope you've enjoyed yourself here, and we will say goodbye for now.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
God bless. Bye,
Bye.
all. Thank you.